Hi everyone. I hope all of you are doing well and all of you are also able to see me, you're able to hear me clearly. Give me a thumbs up in the YouTube chat window. I am monitoring that real time. So just let me know if all of you are able to hear me clearly. Okay, I can already see some comments. There's a question from Pratyush. Hi Pratyush, good evening. Okay, now the comment seems to have vanished. Okay. Uh, Mock score 127, still feeling anxious for the exam 3 months before. Okay, all right. So we'll get there, Ram. Just wait for some more time. Hi, Kiran. Good evening. Okay, hi, Simar. Okay, all right. It seems that now I'm audible and all of you are able to see me. So great. Let's get started with the session. So the session is going to be fairly quick. I'll not be taking a lot of your time. What we're going to focus on is 75 days to MBA CET. So now a lot of you might have taken the CAT, the result are out. You may have appeared for NMAT, SNAP, and so on and so forth. Or some of you may be exclusively preparing for the CET, or some of you may be preparing with us for, say, the NMAT. Just checking if everything is working fine once again. Okay, all right. Yeah, I think we are good to go. Okay. All right. So let's get started with the session then. Let's jump into it right away. Right. So what we are going to be focusing on are these four things. Right. So the first thing that I'm going to focus on is awareness. And when I say awareness, what I mean by that is knowing yourself as a candidate and also knowing the test. Right. So you have to understand what the test is all about, what kind of scores are required to get to a certain percentile, and how can I optimize my preparation, right? So if you know yourself very well, you'll be able to use the 75 days in the best possible manner. The second thing that we're going to be focusing on is going to be the analysis. Now, in analysis, again, I'm talking about two parts. One is going to be the result analysis of the past, which also links very closely with the awareness, but also talking about the CET mock analysis. So we have 20 sim CETs that we offer to the students. So how do you go about analyzing these tests and how do you use it to ensure that you are better prepared for the test? The third thing that we'll focus on is going to be the 75 days plan. So how do you plan the 75 days that you have from here? And again, I'm assuming that all of you know that CET is going to happen on the 9th and 10th of March. And if you don't know, of course, now I've told you that information. And then finally, we'll talk about any questions that you may have. I'll be taking questions from the YouTube chat. Okay, I can already see there are a few questions. Request all of you to be patient. I'll cover about 15-20 minutes of my content, and then I'll be taking the questions that you have. Okay, with that, I think let's get started. So the first thing, as I said, we're going to talk about the awareness. And when I say awareness, what I'm trying to say is you have to know yourself as a candidate. Right? So what is it that I am good at? What is it that I need to work on? And that awareness should not be at a superficial level. See, I've seen a lot of times students come and say that I'm not good at quant, I'm not good at logic, I'm not good at abstract reasoning. But you are just telling me that overall, this is your perception about the whole thing. But it won't happen that you are not good across all the question types that appear in that particular area. For example, if you say that I am not good at quant, it won't happen that you are universally bad at quant. But you will have to be specific and say that, okay, I am not good at, or I need to get better at X, Y, Z things within quant. So for example, what I mean by that is within the identified areas, you have to locate specific issues. For example, you can say that in arithmetic, I need to get better at successive percentage change questions. Or in time speed distance, I need to get better at the races questions that exist, right? So that will help you to develop a clear path as to what kind of effort is required. So that now I can say, okay, fine, maybe logarithms is the problem for me. Let me take out one day, focus on logarithms and finish it off. Or maybe for me, the topic that is a problem is going to be, let's say, grammar. Let me devote maybe the next few days and maybe a couple of hours every day to fixing the grammar rules that I've studied. Right? So let me go through all the grammar rules once again and try and improve your score. So you have to go to a specific topic and a concept level identification rather than just saying, oh, I need to get better at quant. Because then, as I said, right, it won't be the case that you're universally bad at. Now, what target scores you need to look at, right? So since last 2 years, CET has not released the actual scores of the students. It's kind of an unfortunate thing, but there's nothing that we can do about it. So now what you need to figure out is approximately what are the benchmarks that look like. Now we have a lot of data from the past. So if you look at earlier CETs, the earlier versions of CET, say CET 2019, 18, 17, and so on, they used to release the score of the student and the percentile. But now what has happened is in the last 2 years, they have stopped releasing the score, and the only thing that they show on the scorecard is the percentile. That does not tell us how much the students have scored. And that is why the only benchmarks that I can show you are going to be CET 21 and CET 20. What you see is, if you observe carefully, is that the figures haven't changed too much. So a score of 123, for example, if you look at CET 21, it corresponded to 99.49. In CET 20, it corresponded to 99.46. Now, typically, in the previous era of CET, a score of 123 would not have given people a 99.49. Because when I was a student, just to give my story, just to share that, I had a score of 136, 137, and the percentile was around 99.36, 0.37 when I was a student in my very first attempt. So that is why a score of 136 currently has become almost close to 99.9. So it's a function of what is the difficulty of the test. It is also going to be a function of how many people are taking the test. So that is why the only thing that you should be targeting is, if you're targeting, let's say JBIMS, right, which is typically 99.9 plus, I should be aiming for at least a 135. In the current difficulty of the test, somewhere around 135, 140 is like the bare minimum target. I am not saying 135, 140 will be sufficient for you to get into JBIMS. It will be far more than that. So if you are trying to say, okay, I want to be sure of getting into JBIMS, my recommendation will be 150. Because in any of the previous years, if you look at it, a score of 150 plus have put people in JBIMS in most of the cases. There still have been instances where 150 was not sufficient, but that's a separate story, because there were quite a few years when the difficulty fluctuated too much. But right now, looking at the current difficulty that we have, you should be aiming for something like a 140 plus, right? Or a 135, 140 plus is what I would recommend. Now, regarding the score, college cutoff, a lot of analysis around it. We have a website that we maintain called the crackingcet.com. So that's a blog that I write. You can always follow. You can visit the blog. That's the URL that you have. And just go through the articles that I have written on CET. Okay, it will give you a lot of insights in terms of what has happened in the last few years. So for example, CET 19, 20, 21, 22, what all things happened in these tests. If you want to know that, then you will find that information on the CET blog. Okay, so I'll suggest you to have a look at it. Once the session is done, I'll also give a link in the description of this particular video to the blog, so people can always refer to it. Now, you may not be targeting GBMS. You may be targeting a few other colleges. In any case, you just have to know what were the college cutoffs. Again, you will find that information on Cracking CET, or you can also find that information on the CET Cell website. So the CET Cell website, where all the updates are published and all the admission process also is conducted. On that website, you will be able to find the past year data for individual colleges, what were the cutoffs. You will also find the information on the category-wise cutoffs and how many seats are there. So they also publish a seat distribution matrix. So using that, you'll be able to figure out how many seats are there and so on and so forth. If you want to do some research, you can do it. If you don't want to do it, that's still fine at this point of time, because ultimately you have to figure out what is the maximum that I can do in the remaining 75 days. See, what college you get will depend on the final score and percentile. But I just need to push in the remaining 75 days and say, hey, let me give my best. Whatever happens post that, that's okay, right? So don't overdo that research. I will say just a basic understanding is sufficient, that JBMS is roughly 99.9. Or say if I want to get into Wellinger, I should be looking at say 99.5. That kind of awareness if you have, that is going to be fairly sufficient. And again, look at your own category cutoff as well. And they can change quite a bit from year to year. But if you look at the last 1 or 2 years, you will understand that, okay, there is some sort of a range that minimum this much is what I should be looking at. All right, so now let's move to the next part, which is going to be analysis. And in analysis, I'm going to talk about how do you go about analyzing your SIM-CETs. So I saw that somebody has also asked, when will SIM-CETs be released? So we have total 20 SIM-CETs that we offer to the students. And we are going to be releasing the first 5 out of these. And that is going to happen by the 31st December. So by the end of this month, you should have the first 5 SIM-CETs. And then after every 2 weeks, we are going to release more 5 SIM-CETs. So by the time you reach around 10th Feb or mid-Feb, you will have all the 20 SIM-CETs. Okay, so I'll also tell you the plan to take these 20 SIM-CETs, because otherwise I've seen people, they try to finish all 20 once we release them. And towards the end, they are not left with any practice material. So instead of that, if you nicely space things out, it will become a little easier for you to manage as well. Now, how do you analyze these tests? So once you take a full length test, and in case you have not taken it already, I would suggest that the moment it gets released, right? Well, the moment we have, when I said if you haven't taken a test, I'm saying if you haven't taken any full length test, right? Let's say all 200 questions, maybe it's your CET for the very first time and so on. What you need to do is the moment SIM-CETs get released, you take a SIM-CET, doesn't matter what is your level of preparation. You may be somebody who has just joined us, you have done, let's say, only module 1, or you may have joined us sometime back, your syllabus is done, doesn't matter. The moment SIM-CETs get released, you take at least one SIM-CET right away to understand where do you stand. And how do you analyze the test that you take? So every test that you take, right, you have to figure out how many attempts am I making, what is my accuracy, and that accuracy you also have to track at a topic level, that for a particular topic, what is my accuracy? In syllogisms, how am I doing? In, let's say, summary-based questions, how am I doing? In RCs, what am I doing? So if I know my baseline accuracy, it helps me to plan my attempts. I'll talk about it more as we progress. You also need to understand the question selection. So for every question, we also show you how much time you are taking. So once you are done with a SIM-CET, you look at, okay, this particular question, I spent maybe 1 minute, 13 seconds. That was a little too much, right? So I could have completed that question in about 45 seconds, but maybe I doubted myself. So I had to recalculate something, and that is why it took more time. So you have to look at the time distribution and see, are there any question types where you're taking too much time? For example, I've seen a lot of students get stuck on difficult math questions and they don't realize how much time they are spending. The same happens a lot for the logical reasoning questions that appear on the CET. Typically, if you look at the logical reasoning caselets that appear, they tend to be more time consuming. However, last year the story was different. A lot of LR caselets were extremely straightforward and one could have easily completed most of them. But then that's again a separate story. See, the difficulty of the test is not in your control. The only thing that you control is how quickly you do the questions that you see in front of you. Ultimately, it's going to be relative performance, right? That's the definition of percentile. When I say I scored a 99 percentile, it does not tell me anything about what is the percentage score that I've got. It just tells me that I did better than 99% of the population on the test day. So the performance, the relative assessment that is there, that does not really tell you anything about the percentage performance, right? So I just need to figure out that whatever I get in front of me, am I able to solve it in the best possible manner, in the fastest possible manner? And that is the question that I'm going to be asking for every single question that I solve in every single SIM-CET that I appear for. Okay, so that is how you do the SIM-CET analysis. Of course, on this channel, as we progress, we're going to be having a lot of content related to it. We'll hopefully do maybe 1 or 2 SIM-CET live solving as well, which will help you to understand the thought process a little better. Okay. I can see a lot of you have asked, where can I find SIM-CETs? They have not been released yet. As I mentioned some time back, 31st December is when we are going to release the first 5 SIM-CETs for this particular year. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to add at this point of time. And these things may seem very, very small to you, but they have massive impact. And I've seen pretty much every time I go for the CET or for some or the other entrance, it happened, in fact, this year itself. When I went for the snap, the person who was sitting next to me, right, before the test, he started writing A, B, C, D, E, F, G on the rough sheet that was given. And then the positions of A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4 till Z 26. And it's such a small thing to by heart, right? The thing is, why are you not doing it? So a lot of times people think that it's such a petty thing, right? Why should I by heart it? But if you by heart it, you don't have to write it. If you're not writing it on paper, you don't have to refer to it every time. So the moment you have a series question or a letter series, if you're referring to that particular sheet every time, you have a problem. So in CET, every second is going to be crucial. Every mark can create a lot of difference. And something that you may have noticed when we looked at that score versus percentile, that at lower ranges, one mark can create a difference between college A versus college B, right? Even at the top, that is going to happen, where you see that somebody can miss out on JBMS because of one mark. So that is why don't take things lightly. And these are very small things that I want to recommend everybody, that you do it almost on a daily basis, which will eventually help you. The first and foremost thing within this is going to be reading for at least 30 to 45 minutes every day. It doesn't matter what you read. You read fiction, non-fiction, newspapers, magazines, articles from websites. Doesn't matter. Just ensure that you're reading for 30 to 45 minutes every single day, because it improves your reading speed. And reading speed is a transferable skill, right? You can, if it's not only about English, it's not only about verbal ability. If you can read something faster, you can read a quant question faster, you can read LR faster, right? So everything you will be able to read faster because of a faster reading speed. So that is why spend 30 to 45 minutes purely reading. It will ensure that your speed, comprehension, focus, vocab, everything is improving. So do that. The second thing is going to be all these numerical data points that are there, and something that you use a lot across questions, whether it is tables, squares, cubes, and reciprocals. I still know a lot of people when I meet students, I keep asking them, right, that have you done these things? And people say that, oh, I have done 1 to 15 tables, or I know 1 to 20 tables, but I'm not sure post that. Why is it that way? Right? So you have to ask yourself, if I'm somebody who is a serious CET aspirant, I should be doing these things. If I don't do it, then it is disservice, right? So ensure that you do these things. You have to by heart them. One thing that I have not written, and you can definitely do that as well, which is powers. So if you look at indices, the topic, and you have powers for the numbers, right? So if I look at 2 raised to 1 till 2 raised to 10, ideally I should know all of those values, right? I should know 3 raised to 1 till 3 raised to 8. I should know 4 raised to 1 till 4 raised to 6. So those are some of the values that you should be by hearting. Another thing, as I said, the A to Z, I mean, it's like the simplest and the silliest thing that is out there, but I've seen people still not doing it. So A to Z, 1 to 26. If possible, you can also do Z to A in the reverse order. So for example, Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, that kind of a thing. So just knowing even that in the reverse order is some sort of an effort that you'll have to put. But once you do it a couple of times, you will just remember it. Another thing is solving questions without pen paper. So in the remaining 75 days that you have, whenever you see any question, don't just start writing something on the rough sheet. Okay, just try to think, are there any steps that I can skip? Are there any assumptions that I can make in my head? Do I really need to write those values on paper? A lot of times I've seen people don't have to write something, they'll still write it. For example, they'll say, let the work done be 60 units. I mean, that is for a text solutions. It's not something that you should be doing during the test. So you just have to say 60. Even better if you retain that in your head, that let the work in this particular question be 60 units, right? And then jump to the next step. So if you force yourself, right, if you solve questions without pen paper, you force yourself to do it, then only you will be able to do it during the test. Otherwise, you'll not be able to do it. And try to revise steps orally. And that is true for a lot of math questions, right? That, okay, for this particular question, what are the steps? I have to assume total work as 60 units. There are 3 people. I know that they can do it in 20, 15, 12 days. So the unit that they do per day is going to be, say, 3, 4, and 5. And that is how I'm going to do the rest of the question. So all of that, if I can do that calculation as much as possible orally, I would save a lot of time. Another thing which helps a lot in logical reasoning section is going to be brain teasers, Sudoku, Kakuro, Kenken, any puzzles, any word games that you do. So a couple of maybe 15, 20 minutes, right, if you do, or a couple of puzzles if you solve on a daily basis, it will help you to push your natural aptitude up. See, all of us have a baseline aptitude. If I give the CET paper to all of you who are attending this session right now and tell you that take your time, doesn't matter, there's no time limit, you just sit today, solve as many questions as you can. A lot of people will be able to get decent score. But then, and of course, there'll be questions that you'll not be able to solve. The key is, can I improve my aptitude to a level wherein I'm able to solve majority of the questions and do them correctly, and I have to do this task in the next 75 days. So if I have a higher baseline aptitude, it will always be very, very useful. Okay, so these are the things that which look extremely small, but they have phenomenal impact on your overall performance. So now let's come to the core of the session, right? Which is, how do I plan the remaining 75 days that I have? So what I've done is I've divided them in 3 equal parts. That's like the easiest thing to do. The first 25 days, right? Learn concepts thoroughly and do 5 sim CETs. Now, a lot of you, as some of you asked, right? Where do I find them? As I mentioned, they'll be released on the 31st December. Okay. So now, whether you have finished your content, whether you're not finished your content, whether you're a CET student or a CAT student or whatever, doesn't really matter. Right? You have the next 25 days that you have to use to do at least 5 sim CETs. My suggestion is exactly 5 is also fine. And focus on learning concepts. So maybe let's say you are a CAT student, but there were some concepts that you did not do. So do those concepts. Or let's say you're a CET student, maybe you've completed your module 1 and module 2. Try to do a few things from module 3 on your own as well. Right? They will continue to happen in classes for you. But then you also try to finish things off as much as possible for yourself. You can at least do, let's say, the theory and solved examples for these topics, right? So try and cover as many concepts as possible, at least the core concepts. Right? There will be some specific things, for example, in a particular topic, let's say, that you don't want to do at this point of time. That's okay, because you will still have time post this. But in the initial 25 days, I want to develop pretty much all core concepts that I need to face a full length test. Okay. And then take 5 sim CETs. The next 25 days, which are going to be like the middle 25 days that you have to revise the concepts. You will continue to learn new concepts as well. But whatever you had studied in the first 25 days, try to revise these concepts. Then practice area-wise questions. So do, let's say, the quant test, right? Do LR test, do verbal test, do abstract reasoning test. Now you will start thinking more about the speed. In the initial 25 days, you're not thinking about speed. You're trying to build content. It doesn't matter how much time it takes. But in the middle 25 days, you have started now thinking about how quickly am I doing these questions. So you have become cognizant of how much time you're spending per question. And then what you do is you do another 5 sim CETs. So the pace isn't very heavy in the first 50 days if you look at the overall plan. You're taking a test almost every 5 days, right? And that is manageable for anybody. It's almost like one test in a week, so to say, right? If you do even this much, right, in the first 50 days, you will have enough content and enough exposure in terms of what is CET like to handle the remaining 25 days. Now, the last 25 days, they're going to be the most crucial ones, right? So what do you do here? The first thing that you need to focus on is fine-tuning your strategy. Right? So how am I attempting the paper? See, now CET, there are 2 possibilities that can happen, or rather, I would say 3 possibilities that can happen. The first possibility that can happen is it's a sectional paper, wherein at the top, you'll be able to see this is the section name, right? And then you can solve the questions. The second possibility that can happen is it's a completely jumbled paper. And the third possibility that can happen is wherein questions of a section appear together, but you don't see the section bifurcation at the top. So, for example, which is what happened last year, wherein questions, let's say from 1 to 50, were mathematics, 51 to 100 could be VRC, 101 to, let's say, about 175-ish is logical reasoning, and then the remaining are abstract reasoning. For somebody else, that could be the first 20 questions are abstract reasoning, the next 70 questions are LR, the next 60 questions of quant, and so on, right? The number of questions from a particular area can differ. And that is something that you need to factor. See, with CET, don't walk in with any assumption that this will be the number of questions from every section. That can also change because it has happened in the past. Now, the mocks that we create, we are going to have two formats. We are going to give you jumble test as well. We are going to give you questions that appear in sort of a sectional order as well, right? So we will give you exposure of both the types that can happen. Sectional, because they have not done for the last 2 years, we don't see that sort of thing happening. And technically, the sectional breakup and the sectional order is almost the same, right? So that is why we are going to be giving you two different kinds of tests within the 20 tests that we give you. Some of them will be extremely jumbled. Some of them will have like a sectional order to it. Then you also look at maximizing your speed. So how quickly am I doing things, right? Am I handling myself properly? How many questions am I attempting in the first 30 minutes, the next 30 minutes, maybe the middle 1 hour, and so on. So that is an equation that you have to figure out. And how many sim CETs you take in the last 25 days? 10. Overall, if you take 20 sim CETs with complete analysis, I think you don't need more than this. I have known, of course, people who, and a lot of students do it, which is enrolling for multiple test series. If you think you need it, you can always do that. But my question is going to be, if you are an IMS student, have you completed IMS material? Have you completed the 20 sim CETs? Then only go for it. Otherwise, there's absolutely no requirement. 20 sim CETs are more than sufficient. If you plan them properly, the way I've written here, and you do them nicely, you're good to go. As I said, thorough analysis, extremely important. What you also need to do is maintain a book wherein you write down what kind of errors you're making. See, in CET, because you're going fast, right? You are getting about 45 seconds per question. As you're going fast, you tend to make a lot of mistakes. So what kind of mistakes am I making? Let me write that also. That should be very, very handy. And then maintain a formula / concept book. So whatever you study, right? Anything that you notice is, okay, this is important, just note it down somewhere. And in your own handwriting, if you write it down, it helps you to retain that thing better, right? And then you just keep reading this book again and again, right? So it's your own personal notes that you have created. And whenever you want to revise something, you just go through it, because you will not have so much time to go through all the courseware that is given to you. Courseware, you do it once. From there, you take the important points, transfer it to your notes that you're making, and that's the revision that you. Now, one important question that a lot of students have, so let me also address that, which is, a lot of times people ask, should I do random marking? Now, CET does not have negative marking, but that doesn't mean that you do it for every single book. So my advice is, and this has been like the standard advice that I've been giving for ages now, is that avoid random marking in the first 10 sim CETs. If you don't want to do first 10, the first 5 sim CETs. Okay. Why? Because you have to understand what are your two areas of strengths and improvement. Where do you stand exactly? What is your sectional accuracy? What is your topic accuracy? You will only understand that if you don't random mark in the beginning. I have seen a lot of students who come and say that I have got a score of 130, right? But when you ask them how many attempts did you do, they'll say 200. But that is not the genuine attempts that they would have made, right? So that is why first 5 sim CETs, if possible 10, purely from that thing that I need to understand what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. The remaining 10 CETs, the last 10 sim CETs that you take, do random marking, because you also have to get adapted to ensuring that I've marked all 200 questions. So it may sound very simple that you just have to select whatever random options, But in fact, a lot of people are not able to finish CET because they don't keep track of time and they're not practice marking all 200 questions. So you have to ensure that the last 10 sim CETs that you take it as if it's the actual CET, wherein you mark all 200 questions. But for the first 5 or 10, don't do random marking. Now let's jump to a couple of questions. Right? So the questions that typically are asked: what happens in CET, post the CET, when the forms will be released, and all of that. So the CET admission process is slightly complicated. Nothing has been announced yet apart from the dates of CET. So the dates of CET are going to be 9th and 10th of March 2024. After the CET is conducted, they typically release the results in 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes it takes more time. And post that result, they will announce something called a centralized admission process. Okay. Now, what happens in a centralized admission process is that you fill a singular form wherein you indicate all the preferences, which are basically the colleges that you're targeting through the Maharashtra CET for the MBA program. Who can participate in centralized admission process is somebody who has appeared for CET or somebody who has not appeared for CET but has appeared for some other test and wants to try for an admit through that particular test. Just to give an example, let's say you are a Maharashtra student and you are taking CET. So CET will get done for you, result will be out, you fill the centralized admission process form and your process will start. But let's say you are somebody who has taken the CMAT and for some reason you decided I don't want to take the CET. In CMAT, you have a very good score. You think that you will get into JBMS. Now, what you can do is you can also fill the centralized admission process form, right? And submit your CMAT score. Okay, you will say that I have not taken the CET. My advice is that don't take chances. So even if let's say you're not from Maharashtra, right, and you might be thinking of submitting your CMAT score, MAT score, ATMA score, whatever, consider taking the CET. Okay, so don't take chances because see, ultimately everybody is trying to increase their chance of getting in, whether you're a Maharashtra student or not a Maharashtra student. There is no restriction on who can take the CET. So that is why whether you are Maharashtra student or not a Maharashtra student, please consider applying for CET. And in addition to that, other exams as well. So this advice goes for both students, whether you're Maharashtra or not Maharashtra. CET score is accepted, CMAT is accepted, MAT is accepted, ATMA is accepted. At least last year they accepted MAT and ATMA as well. This year, whether they will or not, we don't know. So it's a question mark. But to be safe, take those tests. The second question is MMS versus PGD. Now, MMS admission happens through the centralized admission process. The PGDM admission, a lot of colleges have two programs. For example, Wellinger, they have an MMS program, they have a PGDM program. MMS program is governed by the University of Mumbai. So they have to participate in the centralized admission process for that. But they also have a PGDM, which they control. For that, they will conduct the admission process. Now, for that, they can decide which test that they want to accept. So they accept CAT, ZAT, ATMA, CMAT, and so on, right? So if you want to target a particular institute which has PGD, you have to apply to that institute separately. So MMS admission is a centralized admission process. You fill one form for all the colleges. But if you're targeting PGDM, you have to apply to the college separately. Okay, hope I've made that distinction clear. The third question, as I said, will CMAT, MAT, ATMA be accepted for all India admission process? Mostly, yes. We don't know that yet. So the safest bet that somebody can take is to take these tests. See, if you're somebody who is aspiring to get into any of the top colleges through the Maharashtra CET, you must consider MAT and ATMA because you never know which exam will take you to JBMS, right? So just to give again my example, when I was a student, right, they used to accept MAT ATMA even at that point of time. So I had taken the CET and I had a 99.99 there. But before CET, I had taken MAT, which used to happen in December. So December MAT, I had taken, I took Feb MAT as well. I took CET as well, and I took ATMA as well, because at that time there was no CMAT. I took all of these tests purely because I wanted to get into JPMS, because I knew that at least in some of these tests, one of these tests I should be able to crack. And even if I crack one of those tests nicely, I'm getting into JPMS. So anybody who is seriously thinking of getting into top tier institutes, please consider taking all of these tests. Don't take chances, because you never know which test will work for you. I mean, sharing my score from those years, CET I had a 99.99, MAT I had a 99.99, ATMA I actually had a 99.6 that year, right? But at least I had taken that test. So it wasn't like that I didn't appear for the test at all. So give an attempt. Whatever happens, it won't go waste in any institute comparison. A lot of students start thinking Chetna or MET or IES or Dalmia or Lala or this or that. This is not the time to do it. So the next 75 days, you don't have to do institute comparison, right? For now, if you're applying for any PGDM programs, just be on the lookout for the deadlines. So Wellinger, when is the deadline? Dalmia, when is the deadline? MET, when is the deadline? So those things you can track. But then you don't have to get into the comparison which one is better and which one is not. And the last question is, can I still make it if I'm struggling? My answer is yes. Because CET is a test where if you put in the right effort and you know how exactly to handle that particular test, you should be able to crack it. Of course, there are a lot of parameters, your baseline aptitude, your question exposure, how many tests have you taken, how seriously you have taken them, how have you analyzed, and all of that. Having said all of it, I think it is possible to crack the test in 75 days, especially if you're somebody who has been preparing for it. Even if you're not been preparing for it, then there's 75 days that you have. If you do everything that you can possibly, you should be able to crack it. Okay. So don't feel disheartened. Let's say if you have taken CAT or SNAP and MAT and you're not done well in those tests, it does not mean that you'll not be able to do well on the CET. The reason for this is CET has a different type altogether, right? It's not something that will work for everybody. So when I was preparing, there was a friend of mine and he used to do very well on the CAT mocks. In fact, he on the actual CAT, he got a 99.3 that year. The same year, I had a 98.2, right? But in CET, I was able to get a 99.99 and he could not get a very high score, which would have taken him to JB. The reason for that is he was more of a content heavy guy, wherein if there is a test which is content heavy, he would do better on it. But I was more of a speed guy. So if there is a test which is assessing how quickly you can do things, I'll do better on it. So that is why don't just get disheartened because of, say, a bad CAT score or whatever has happened, right, in the past. Doesn't really matter. Some of you might be CET repeaters, right? What has happened in the past has happened, right? There's no point crying about it. Now just focus on what is it that you can do in the remaining 75 days, especially if you're a repeater, what mistakes you made last time, you have to fix those things. Okay, so that should be your focus in the remaining period. All right, so I'm pretty much done with the content that I've had to share. I'm going to be taking questions from the YouTube chat window. Sorry, in between I had to sort of cuff in between here and there because I'm not keeping very well. But I hope it wasn't a bad experience for all of you. Okay, there's a question from Ram, mock score 127, still feeling anxious for the exam. What should I do? Firstly, 127 is a very good score, right? So I don't think you should be anxious at all at this point of time. And I completely understand the anxiety, the apprehensions that you have, right? But push yourself. Okay, so 127, figure out how many attempts you're making. I'm assuming you must be around 150, 155, 160 genuine. Then what are these 40 questions that I'm not solving? Or am I not reaching these questions, right? Am I making mistakes? So if you work on that, now the gap is like a really small gap that you need to cover. But it's not very easy to cover that gap because you have exhausted your capacity, right? So when you reached a score of 127, you have used a lot of things that you already know. So now you'll have to figure out, okay, what are those 73 things that I'm not able to do? And out of those 73, how many will I be able to push? So that is something that you have to do in the remaining days. Sure, the anxiety will die in the next 30 to 40 days. Once you start hitting good scores like consistently, then there is no anxiety. Then it becomes a part of routine, right? So in my first attempt, the mistake that I did was I didn't do proper mock analysis, right? I kind of didn't know what I was doing. So I would take the mock test, not do anything post that. But the second attempt, I knew exactly what to do. Take a mock, figure out the mistakes, figure out what questions you're not doing, go back to books, revise those areas, solve more questions, take the next mock, right? If you keep on doing that process, so for my second attempt, I was actually hitting a 150 plus pretty much every single mock that I was taking. So then it becomes part of your routine, right? Then you're not surprised. Then you're not anxious. Okay. Pratyush scored 99.72 in 2023. That's a brilliant score. I hope you get into a top college this year, Pratyush. OMS candidate want to read JB. Simple recommendation, look at CMAT, MAT, ATMA, and CET, of course. When will SimCETs be released? As I said, 31st December. When will the entrance form be released? We don't know the date yet. Hopefully in the month of Jan or Feb. I am under All India category. Can I get into JBMS through CET? Yes, you can. It is possible. If you are a non-Maharashtra candidate or an All India candidate, you can submit CET, CAT, CMAT, MAT at scores. At least that's what they accepted last year. This year, whether they will accept MAT or ATMA, we don't know. So my simple recommendation is take the CET. I scored low in CAT. Will I be able to make it to JBMS? Absolutely fine. In fact, we had a lot of students when I got into JBMS who had terrible scores in some or the other exam, right? We also had somebody who had about 50% in graduation, right? So it is possible to get into JBMS because the selection process is very different compared to a lot of other institutes, right? Do we have any courses for MBA CET from IMS? Yes, we have live classroom, self-learning, test series programs. You can visit imsindia.com to know more about these programs. Okay. We also have classroom programs, which I've not written here, but you can visit the nearest IMS center to know more about it. What is the ideal accuracy percentage for CET? Somewhere around 80 to 85%, right? I would always aim for that sort of an accuracy. And also what happens is in CET, it comes from a combination. See, there will be some areas where you do very well. So for me, it used to be mathematics, almost 100% accuracy. But assumptions, conclusion, inference, critical reasoning questions, I used to be around 60% accuracy. So when you look at that 60% and 100%, the balance is 80%. So that is something that you need to aim for. 80 to 85% would be a very sweet spot for anybody who is targeting a good score. Where to learn concepts from? Okay, so if you're already an enrolled student, you have the courseware that is given to you. So that's the place to go. It's my third attempt. First, I got 98. Second, I got 90. Okay, I am assuming some bad day maybe on the second attempt. 3 years gap now, so disappointed and anxious. What should be strategy now? Even if I get good college, will 3 years gap be a problem? So for the MBA CET colleges that you have, right? Because most of them don't have GDPI for the MMS program, it doesn't matter. If you're applying for the PGDM programs, however, the gap could be an issue. I would suggest that right now, there's no point taking up a job because it's just 2.5 months time. I would suggest that you try to improve your score as much as possible. So taking more mock test and just figure out what happened in that second attempt, right? That's the only thing that you need to avoid this time. You didn't say which one is better, MMS or PGDM. Okay, so between MMS and PGDM, firstly, there's no such thing as one is absolute better over the other. Ultimately, it's the brand of the college. So I would suggest that if you get a college which is, let's say, a good brand, it doesn't matter whether you do MMS or PGDM from there. But if it is a lower ranked or not great institute in terms of its brand nationally, I would always prefer a MMS program in that college over the PGDM program, because MMS is ultimately a university degree, right? That would be the preference. So I hope I've answered your question. I don't get time because of my job. क्या बता सकते हैं कैसे प्लान करूं? Okay. So see, all of us have limited amount of time, right? तो आपको अगर आप जॉब कर रहे हो तो आपको जितना टाइम मिलता है उतना ही टाइम किसी और को जो जॉब कर रहा है उसको भी मिल रहा है, राइट? सो व्हाट यू हैव टू फिगर आउट इज कि दिन में या रात में कौन सा ऐसा टाइम है जहां पे मैं पढ़ सकती हूँ या पढ़ सकता हूँ, राइट? सो एम आई अ मॉर्निंग पर्सन? तो आई ट्राई टू पुट मोर एफर्ट्स इन द मॉर्निंग. एम आई अ नाइट पर्सन? आई स्टडी इन द नाइट. If I get weekends free, I'll put in more effort on the weekend, right? See, everybody has to adjust somewhere, right? And put in efforts. If you are clear about intent, that effort will come. If you are shaky about the intent, the effort will not come, right? तो अंदर से वो जो एक there has to be that inherent fire, right? Okay, I want to do something. Otherwise, no amount of force will help you to get to a good school. You have to feel it inside that I want to get to a good score and this is what I want to crack. तो फिर वो आएगा, right? See, everything is like a matter of priority more than anything else. From IMS portal, where should we practice? I'm a CAT student. Okay. So I would suggest that you do the basic level questions, the basic and the intermediate questions from whatever you have. So learn module or practice module, you can just do the basic and the intermediate questions. Target score for CET mocks, as I said, you should be targeting some, maybe I can take you back to that particular slide. Maybe some of you joined in a bit late. So if you're aiming for something like a 95 percentile, start targeting 100 plus in your sim CETs. If you're aiming for like the top colleges, 99 plus or 99.5 or 99.9 plus, these are the figures that you should be looking at. Is there any chance to get a college through 80 percentile score in CAT? Firstly, the discussion today is not about CAT. We have a different channel for CAT wherein we discuss it. There's a lot of content that we have put there, so you can start going through that. We in fact made a video yesterday itself after the result as to what are the next things that can be done. But yes, it is possible to get into a reasonably good college even at 80 percentile. Does academic record matter for JB admission? No. So right now, the process is such that for the MMS admissions, the academic record does not matter. For JBIMS MSc Finance program, the admission of that happens much later. For that particular program, the 10th, 12th, and the academic record that you have matters. Okay. Will you please brief about GMAT? Okay. So firstly, session is not about GMAT. You can just figure out what the format is. All of that is like publicly available information. Is AdMat workshops on the portal enough for learning concepts? Should cover most of it. So you can go through the AdMat masterclasses that we have. Are the registrations open for CET? They have not even started. So you'll have to wait for some time. How is the selection criteria based on different entrances? They don't do any bifurcation there, right? Or any differentiation. So your CET score is considered at par with your MAT score or ATMA score or CMAT score. When I say score, I'm talking about percentile. So a CMAT 99.99 is equal to a CET 99.99. That's how they look at it. Veena has asked, do they normalize across slots in CET? I'm a repeater. It doesn't seem fair score calculation for all the candidates. How many questions to attempt? Okay. So firstly, the normalization is something that has always been sort of an issue that gets discussed post the result. Because CET, for whatever reasons, is not conducted in the best possible manner, unfortunately. Even last year it happened where in slot 1, people got 180 minutes, right? And then they realized that, and then they fixed it for the remaining slots. After that, they realized that people got 180 minutes. So during the test, what happened was they stopped at 150 minutes. A lot of people were not able to complete the paper because of that, as they were referring to the on-screen timer that was there. The other story is that after that, they did a retake for 10,000 people who had got complete 180 minutes. In spite of that, there were people whose name didn't appear in that list, right? So, see, these things, unfortunately, we don't control. I mean, this is like the worst that can happen to anybody, right? But we can't start rejecting a test purely because of that. Right? Because see, ultimately it's a test which will take so many people to JBMS, Idnam, Wellinger, and so on. So I would only suggest you that ignore those things that the worst thing that can happen. Just ignore it. Focus on the CET. That how can I get a good score? Right? And since you have asked for a 150 OMS candidate, if you're aiming to score 150, your genuine attempt should be somewhere around 175, 180. Okay. Pratyush, sure, we'll keep taking sessions like these throughout the journey. I got 211 in NMAT, but as score is, so should I fill any other college applications and so on? So, firstly, 211 in NMAT can take you to some of the other colleges, may not be NMIMS, like the top options there, but a few other options, right? So, figure out whether you want to consider those. And in terms of CET, start with CET preparation, right? You have 75 days ahead of you. Will IMS mock tests be available online? Yes, all 20 of them. How many marks should I look for admission in JB through OMS category through CET? Because last 2 years they have not released marks, we don't know. But last year paper was fairly simple. Uh, I think I should have got about a 160, 165, or even 170 in that paper. But unfortunately, they don't release scores. They just release the percentile. So I would suggest that a 150 plus should be your target. Least percentile required for JBMS for Maharashtra students, that data has been around 99.9. For outside Maharashtra students, it is generally 99.99. In some cases, it can be 99.98. Sidnam or NMIMS? Overall, if you look at the brand national presence and everything, NMIMS is better than Sidnam. That is also evident in the rankings that are there. 120 in mocks is enough for JBMS? No, definitely not. You should be pushing yourself to a 135, 140, or even more. Do we have to fill JBMS form separately? No, the admission happens through the centralized admission process. It will be conducted after the seat. Okay. All right. So I think I've answered most of the question, and we have now started repeating a lot of things that I had already spoken about. In case you had missed some part and because of which you're asking this question, you can always watch the recording once it is uploaded, right? I mean, immediately after this session, the recording will be available. What is the percentile required for Sidnam? Okay, all of the cutoff data is there on crackingct.com. You can subscribe to the blog and you'll be able to see a lot of content there. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Something that I've not answered. Okay, I saw one question related to PGDM colleges in Mumbai. Again, I've written an article on the crackingct.com blog about PGDM options. In Mumbai, if you're asking specifically for colleges which have the PGDM program, one of the best options would be Wellinger, right? Because KJ Somaya, again, it's a MBA program that they offer. It's a separate admission process. For PGDM, of course, the number one name in Mumbai would be Wellinger. CET to be conducted before date. CET, they have announced 9th and 10th March. So that is the communication that we have also sent to all the students. SimCET availability date, 31st December is when the first 5 SimCETs will go live. Kiran, about 3 years gap, I was asking for summers and finals. Will that be a problem? You will have to justify it in the interview for sure if they ask you. But not a big problem as long as you do well in the college as well. See, the only suggestion is if you have these kind of issues, you join the college, try to be the best student that you can there, right? Do extremely well academically and otherwise, and hopefully something or the other will work out. Okay, do we have to fill college forms again for CET? So CET is a separate thing altogether. If you have applied for, let's say, Wellinger, right? That is a Wellinger PGDM application. For Wellinger PGDM, they don't accept CET scores. For Wellinger MMS, they accept CET score. That admission is through CET centralized admission process, which will happen after CET. Now, I know that a lot of you don't know these processes. But again, just for everybody's advice, everybody's benefit, simple thing. A lot of colleges in Mumbai or outside Mumbai as well, they have two programs, MMS and PGDM. MMS admission happens through the centralized admission process. It will be done after CET result. For PGDM, a lot of colleges already have started their processes. If you're targeting a particular college, go to that college website and check for the deadlines. Okay, what else do we have? I'll just take a last, maybe another 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Is there any fixed pattern of sections in CET, or the format keeps changing, as you mentioned, which section tend to appear? The sections or the areas remain pretty much the same. Roughly 25 questions of abstract reasoning, roughly 75 questions of logical reasoning, roughly 50 questions of mathematics and data interpretation, roughly 50 questions of verbal ability and reading comprehension. The number of questions can change. The order in which questions appear can change. Some places say JBMS doesn't have GDPI, while some say it has. What's true? Okay, great question, Ribhav. JBMS has 3 full-time 2-year programs. The first program is called JBMS MMS, which is the flagship MBA program. For that, the process is completely 100% on the test score. There's no GDPI. The second full-time program that they have is JBMS MSc Finance. For that, they conduct group exercise and interviews. And the third program that they have is the JBMS 2-year MHRD program. Even for that, they do the group discussions and interviews. Okay. So for the flagship MBA program, no GDPI. For the other 2 programs, which is JBMS MSc Finance and JBMS MHRD, there is group discussion and interview. But both these other 2 programs that I spoke about, admission happens much later. We are talking about something like 5 months down the line. Okay. So you have to wait for that. Nothing will happen before CET is conducted. Overall difficulty of SNAP slot wise. The session is not about SNAP, first of all, and haven't really tracked. Firstly, there's no point tracking. They don't normalize. So what can we do? Right? Whatever score you get, whatever final result comes out, that's about it. Right? So don't get into overthinking now as to what the comparison is between the slots. Okay. All right. So we have pretty much reached the end. I know that you may still have a lot of questions. Please leave them as comment on this particular video once we end the session, and I'll reply at the earliest. Subscribe to this particular channel. This is the second channel that we have. And also visit crackingct.com and subscribe there as well. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. Wish all of you all the best. Next 75 days, we are going to be there with you. We'll continue to have more sessions, more strategy sessions. We'll have a few other topic related sessions. We'll have some live solving sessions and all of that. And of course, the Sim CETs will be beginning soon. So I hope all of you will stay with us in this journey, and we are going to be there with you. So thanks once again for joining. Wish all of you all the best once again, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone. Take care.